What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. So we have the Kizuna Clash, which is going to be starting June 25th, coming up very shortly against Wapol. And this is going to be a big one, as you can go ahead and pick up the Super Evolution Skulls for Wano lore, which I know a lot of people are looking forward to. So this is going to be a big one. Make sure to go ahead and get prepped, get your team sorted, you know, pick up characters, evolve characters, do what you need to do to get your teams prepared so that when the event does go live, you can jump straight into it. And that's the goal of this video today, is to give you guys a bit of a rundown as to what you should be expecting for this Kizuna Clash. A little bit different from last month. This is not a super boss Kizuna, so there's only the 3 bosses, and that's all you really have to build for. So it's not going to be as oppressive as some of the other Kizuna Clashes that we've had. So let's go ahead and jump into the team comps that I have. The first one here is going to be versus the Psy boss. So you want to ideally be building, you know, around the int coloring, of course, but the characters that receive cooldown are Slashers, Driven, and Cerebral characters. You see on stage 2 there's some paralysis, and the big thing about this fight is that there is the pain debuff on stage 2, so every time you perform an action you get dealt 10,000 damage. Now there is obviously a very key way of getting around this with the new Legend Chopper that is out. If you use that as your captain, he has the ability, with his captain ability, to remove 10 turns of the pain debuff. So if you can build around that, that's awesome, but you can build without needing Chopper at all. You know, you can just build with lots of health recovery, and that is a way to get around it. However, your team will be compromised in the damage department if you opt to go down that route. So we have the gimmicks here at level 31. Of course, the gimmicks in the first 30 levels are mundane, they're fine, and then after level 31 is where it just gets scaled up a little bit higher. So you can see here, there's going to be a health cut, so not only do you get the pain debuff on stage 2, there's also the health cut here on stage 3. There's also the bind debuff as well. There is chain attack down, 5 turns of increased defense, and also an intimidate that lasts for 2 turns that reduces the multiplier of any of the following buffs by 2. So attack and orb boosts are reduced by 2 turns when you activate them on the final stage, and if you use a chain lock on the final stage, then the enemy is going to give you attack down, change your slots, and remove your beneficial effects, which is kind of nasty. And then once you kill the final boss, he does 50,000 damage to the crew. So this is the team comp that we have. So you can build this team with Chopper Friend Captain, and if that's the case, the healing supports on this team like Vivi and Hiyori are not really required at all. But if you opt to use someone that isn't Chopper as a Friend Captain, you know, you could basically use whatever you want. You could use like Int Legend Marco if you want, just to have the healing capabilities. That is an option that you could go for. But the way that this team works is we have the Zoro. This Zoro is really good on stage number 2. He deals with the special reverse that can occur. He does deal with the paralysis, and he also deals with the chain. He gives you a 3-turn 3.25 chain lock, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, because that is not good enough to get around the chain attack down on the final stage. However, there are ways that we can basically buff it. Now, we would also go ahead and use the Shank special, which gives us an attack boost, gives us the full board of slots as well. With the support of Custard, we can lock those slots, which is dope. And then you can also swap Robin, swap from Koala into Robin to give the affinity boost. And then when you use the Robin special, you're going to get an affinity boost on the last stage as well. And then obviously 3 turns of a really good orb buff for the crew. And then eventually when you reach the final stage, the Jinbei special not only deals with the defense up on the opponent's side of the field, but it also gives a heal to the crew, which is kind of nice to deal with the pain debuff if you opt to not use Chopper Friend Captain. And then of course he gives himself a tandem slot, which means you can trigger a super tandem with Jinbei, Robin, and Zoro, so just a little bit of additional damage for the crew. And another big component with this team is the Page 1, because Page 1 not only removes the bind that's inflicted on the final stage, but it also helps with buffing your chain lock by 0.3, meaning Zoro's 3.25 chain lock goes up to 3.55, allowing you to get around the chain attack down that occurs on the final stage. So a pretty cool team that is built together here, utilizing the Shanks captain, which can boost all of our units, being the Mono Int team. And then of course Shanks, when you use his special on stage 2, gives an attack boost for multiple turns. The Robin gives the orb boost for multiple turns, so you don't have to worry about the intimidate that occurs on the final boss stage. So this is just a really cool idea of a team that gets around all of the gimmicks and gives you a pretty solid amount of damage. Moving on to the Dex, or the Dex variation versus the quick boss itself versus Wapol. This is a very, very interesting piece of content. The way that they've designed this particular boss in Kizuna means that you have to play a little bit differently. And what I mean by that is that, I mean, nothing really crazy on stage 2, but in terms of characters you want to bring, Cerebral, Powerhouse, and Free Spirit receive the cooldown. Battle 2, you know, you've got Bind on your left side of your crew, so you want your Bind Reducer to be on your right side of your crew, so make sure you build around that. There is Hunger, 3 stacks of Hunger. You get a full board of recovery slots, but for a certain amount of time, I think it's 3 or 5 turns, the recovery slots deal damage to you when you consume them instead of healing your HP, and that is, yeah, for 5 turns. So while you can consume the recovery slots to get around the Hunger, if you just have a character with Hunger removal, it's not going to be a big issue, which is why we have Hiyori on the team, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But this is why the gimmicks of this fight are so weird, right? So when you reach the final stage on level 31, you can see that for 4 turns, you can only use 2 specials. So that already is pretty annoying. But then you see at the second line, for 3 turns, all of your crewmates are silenced. So this is not Special Bind, this is not Fear. This is the gimmick where you cannot switch, you cannot use the specials of all of your crewmates for 3 turns. So this means that you have to use all of your crewmate specials on stage 2 and then have your captains open on the final stage. So very, very weird design. And you can see that there is 5 turns of attack up, 5 turns of slot boost, 5 turns of a chain addition, and there is going to be 1 turn of enemy defense up, so finding a way to get rid of that is going to be important. And there is also 1 turn of special reverse for your captain top right position. And there is a chain multiplier attack down. You need to try and exceed a 3 times chain, and there is going to be an intimidate against conditional boosts and color affinity boosts, and if you end up delaying them, then they will inflict paralysis, but they do remove the chain attack down, the attack boost, and the orb boost that are given to your crew. But honestly, the best way to get around it is to spam a bunch of specials that last for multiple turns on stage 2, carry them into the final stage, and then your captains will be open to use their specials as well. So this is the team that we have here. We've got Jinbei on the crew to give us 3 turns of an attack boost. We've got the Robin and Koala to give us 3 turns of an orb boost. We've got Hiyori to get rid of the bind, full board of Wano slots. We also have the Zoro from Egghead, giving us 3 turns of chain addition, and then we also have Yamato and Ace, Yamato and Luffy, should I say, as our captain. The captain position, you can kind of just use whatever you want, so long as that the captain boosts your crewmates and you get good damage out of that. I decided to go with this because their special allows you to get increased damage taken to the opponent through immunity, so that's really strong. We have the law support on Luffy and Yamato to give -1 turn of cooldown on the final stage, so we can kind of deal with the special reverse. And the support of Chopper Usopp on Robin Koala removes 1 turn of defense up when the enemy inflicts it. So, you know, there are quite a lot of supports that you could use to get rid of the 1 turn of defense. You could opt to use one of your captains to remove defense. You know, there's a couple of different ways you can go about it, but essentially the way you want to build is 3 turn buffs on stage 2, carry them into the final stage, and then your captain positions will be open to use their specials on the final stage. Do note though that there is going to be the special reverse on your captain position, and there is 1 turn of defense that you have to get around. And then to wrap up the video, we have one last boss, which is the versus int variation. So we want to build a mono Psi team, so characters that are Psi, int, and Dex all receive cooldown, which is what we have here. Now, we're going to be using the double Gear 5 hybrid, 6-star Luffy and 6-star plus Gear 5 Luffy. Does not matter which one is your main captain. Not really that big of an issue. However, the support that we have on Luffy is pretty good, being the Rare Recruit Ivankov, very, very old Rare Recruit. But this says anytime you're inflicted with poison, you remove it, so that's going to be important in this content. Another important character for this is going to be this Crocus, this Rare Recruit Crocus that came out quite a few years ago when Roger first debuted in the game. The main reason why he is good is because of his healing components. He does overheal for the crew, and he allows you to get damage reduction, and he removes burn. All of these things are actually pretty good for stage 2 here, because you can see on stage 2 you get given one of the super burns, so every time you hit a perfect you're dealt the damage immediately, not at the end of the turn. You also get a full board of bomb slots. You also have a barrier on the enemy side of the field where you have to hit them with bomb slots, and if you kill the opponent, then they deal 30,000 damage to the crew. So Crocus removes the burn, you have the 30,000 damage which Crocus reduces by 90%, and Crocus gives overhealing. The overhealing will actually be an important component. And then, of course, for this stage, you would just use the EX Super of your 6-star Luffy to enable him to make your characters go through defensive effects, and then you could use the super switch of your Zoro and Sanji to change those bomb slots into tandem, which is really good, and then you can save the rest of the specials for the final stage. Now, when you reach the final stage here, you do get a health cut of a 50% health cut. There's Bind, there is Special Reverse, but of course we don't worry about that because of Gear 5 Luffy. There's also Despair, the other Gear 5 deals with that. There is Poison dealt to your crew as well, and there is this really interesting gimmick here at the bottom, Interruption, when ally poison status is not applied after using a special, super special, versus effect, switch effect, super switch effect, and when crew's HP is below 50%. So the whole gimmick here is we want to avoid that interrupt, so by using Crocus we have overhealed on stage 2, we have the damage reduction to reduce the amount taken from the death hit on stage 2, so that when we enter the last stage we should hopefully be above that 100% threshold due to the overhealing of Crocus, which is why we have the Perona support, which gives additional recovery stat to Crocus himself, and then it means that when we get given the health cut and then the support of Ivankov is activated, removing the poison, it should not activate the interrupt on the opponent, which you can see it does do bind, but it applies resilience, and resilience is kind of annoying. Even if it does still activate, it's probably not the end of the world, because you could just replace the Law and Kid on this team with like Legend Momo, for example, which does an attack boost as well, but you know, also does the end of turn damage, which is a really good thing that you could be applying. Now, one thing that I did overlook is 1 turn of paralysis, but I mean, there are so many paralysis removers you could be using, like Law and Kid, for example. We could just go ahead and quickly put on Legend Corazon on Law, and that works completely fine, so that's not really going to be a big issue there. But yeah, basically Crocus is used on the previous stage, the super swap of Zoro Sanji, we get through stage 2, and then on the final stage, obviously use the EX Super of the 6-star Luffy as well, and on the last stage, we just use the rest of our specials. There's no real rhyme or reason to it, just use the rest of your specials. You'll have Attack, Orb Boost, Color Affinity Boost, Full Board of Slots, Super Tandem, Rush Sugo Special, Delayed Conditional Boost. This team will just do so much damage. So yeah, this is definitely the easiest of all of the bosses, mainly because Gear 5 carries super hard in this boss fight. So all in all, I think that this Kizuna Clash is going to be a very interesting one. Aside from that quick boss, which looks a little finicky, I do think that the rest of the bosses will be definitely doable, especially, you know, that versus Psy boss with Chopper Friend Captain is going to be pretty easy. The versus Int boss when you build a side team with Gear 5 is extremely easy. And then, yeah, that versus quick one will be a little bit of an interesting boss for sure. But as I said at the start of the video, make sure to go ahead and farm this, get the Super Evolution of Wano Law. He's going to be really, really nice in Pirate Rumble, of course. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.